Thank you, everyone, and good morning. Salama Bagi. And thanks for coming back after what was a very informative, entertaining, and energetic morning session. So it's good to see you here with us. It is there. So thank you for the introduction. That makes me sound like quite a busy man, but nothing is more important than spending time with very important countries in the natural gas world. And Indonesia, as a major producer and consumer of gas, is clearly one of those. It's great to be back in Indonesia, my first time to Jakarta, but I always very much appreciate the opportunity to be here and engage your fellow countrymen. So today I'm going to share some thoughts about the role of natural gas in a carbon-constrained world. It's a positive message overall, but we in the gas industry do have a lot of work to do. So as the kind introduction indicated, this is the vision for the International Gas Union. It's a not-for-profit organization that's really committed to bringing about positive change for the global gas industry, but even more importantly, for our fellow citizens around the world. We are a strong advocate for the technical, the economic, the political progress for our global industry, and progress that's going to help us bring abundant, affordable, and cleaner energy to those that desperately need it. A quick word about the organization. The IGU spans 91 countries, membership from 91 countries that represent over 97% of the world's production, transportation, and use of natural gas. The United States is privileged at this time to both lead and serve this organization, and we will do so in through June of 2018. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. Our home office several months ago moved from Oslo, Norway, to the lovely city of Barcelona, Spain, and that's where we will reside for the next 6 years. And for those of you that track presidencies in the IGU, the United States followed the French presidency, which was preceded at the end of 2012 by the Malaysian presidency. And following our presidency in the United States, the role moves to Asia once again when South Korea will host the presidency. Indonesia has played an active role in IGU for a long time. We're privileged to have the Indonesian Gas Association as our charter member, but very importantly, we have Pertamina as a premium associate member and the Indonesian Gas Society as an associate member. So we're really grateful for their active engagement and support, and rest assured that Indonesia's gas industry is well represented by those organizations. So we'll talk a little bit about the role of natural gas in this transition, whatever transition means. What it means to me, this end state of a transition, is a lower carbon intensive economy, lower carbon intensive energy system, in that one is that is able to sustain itself over a long period of time, but also one that's affordable today and creates benefits and value and quality of life improvements today while seeking dramatic improvement in the future. We clearly see gas as an essential element of today's and tomorrow's energy portfolio. It can be used as a replacement for coal and heavy fuels in transportation and electricity generation. It's used directly as a fuel in heating homes, businesses, and industry. And clearly, it's a complement to renewables, providing flexible and responsive generation during periods of intermittency of those renewables. And gas delivers these benefits at a cost that doesn't break the bank. So let's be clear. Policies matter. They translate into standards and regulations. They provide signals to investors and operators. And many policies today signal reduced use of fossil fuels, including gas. COP21 back in December of 2015 represented a turning point on the importance of tackling climate change, with an overwhelming call for action. As you know, more than 188 countries were signatories to the agreement, representing over 97% of global CO2 emissions. And we do fully support this. We in the gas industry fully support this because we're convinced that natural gas can make a very significant contribution toward this goal. And I point to the many outlooks that have been done. We may hear more of those this morning regarding the forecast for natural gas globally, both pre- and post-COP21, that clearly point to the important role that natural gas will play in fueling tomorrow's energy mix. But we believe that if policymakers and governments are really serious about tackling climate change today and tomorrow, and also improving the quality of life for our fellow citizens, that the most economic and rapid way to a lower carbon-intensive world is one that uses greater amounts of natural gas. So I have an example from my country. That's the United States. I come from Chicago. That gives an illustration of gas and renewables working together. I understand it's a key topic of this conference, clearly a very important one. But this is an example that shows how gas and renewables are transforming the USA's energy mix. It's a stunning trend, actually, where we see on the lower line that's increasing, that is the combination of U.S. primary energy consumption, the lower line between gas and renewables together. And we see a rapidly declining trend that shows the reduction in oil and coal that are being used. And that's a combination of a variety of things. Certainly we have the benefit of low-priced shale gas that is replacing coal in power generation. But we're also seeing tremendous renewables growth, first in wind and now in solar, tighter energy efficiency standards, and much higher fuel economy standards for our vehicles. But because of natural gas, this transformation is occurring, and it's occurring at little or no additional cost to our economy. And you could see, we believe, in just a few years, we are going to see the crossover where gas and renewables together become the primary sources of primary energy for the United States. But besides decarbonizing our energy mix, I wanted to highlight another very important topic that we in the IGU feel extremely strongly about. And that issue is clean air. It's fundamental to quality of life. In areas suffering from poor air quality, particularly in the megacities of the developing world, it's a killer. But it's not just the developing world. I just read an article, I'm looking at Andrew Walker over there from Cheniere, but I guess it was in the Financial Times just yesterday. London, there are 9,500 premature deaths, actually it was Business Week, a year attributed to poor air quality. And I understand that Oxford Street this year, by January 5th, had already exceeded 2017's total emissions for all of 17. So it's not just a developing world issue, but it's fundamental to the quality of life, and it's why IGU took the clean air message to COP21 in Paris, and furthermore, we took the clean air message to the EU Gas Week just last November in Brussels. We released a couple reports entailing case studies where cities have undertaken the challenge of polluted air and improving those, and we've highlighted and demonstrated the role of natural gas in decarbonizing those energy systems and improving and enhancing the transformation to a cleaner air. One of the cities that we featured was Beijing, and I saw an article, this one was the Financial Times, just yesterday, that Beijing is committing to a 30% reduction in coal use just in 2017 alone. Natural gas and renewables will play a key role in that. So clean air is extremely important focus for the IGU. Clearly, burning coal and heavy fuels contribute to that air quality problem. Not solely, but those are key contributors to that problem. And to a large degree, replacing those fuels with natural gas improves air quality. And as such, around the world, coal does face some headwinds to its growth. There are tighter regulatory standards, particularly around emissions. Community resistance also, like many infrastructure projects in energy around the world. And there's more competition from natural gas, of course. It's cheaper these days, more widely available, and easier to build. There's clearly competition from renewables, where the technology evolution, coupled with favorable government policies, are really driving down the effective cost of renewable energy. And we're seeing certain funds, certain banks, hesitant to finance certain types of fossil fuel projects. And there are regular attempts to apply carbon pricing schemes to reflect the externalities of carbon emissions and healthcare costs into the energy source. So clearly coal is facing headwinds. But reports of its death are premature. It's not only not dead, but hundreds of new plants are under construction around the world, many of them in Asia. And even though some of these projects have been suspended or terminated, there are still, again, hundreds of facilities under construction, including many in this country. But clearly economies need energy, and the quickest route to economic opportunity and enhanced quality of life is affordable energy. Coal is readily available, and it's inexpensive. It's there to meet a growing need. And it's clear to me that coal is going to continue to be used, but that use should be efficient, as clean as possible, and minimized. Now, I have an example, 2 slides I'd like to share with you from a very developed economy, that being Germany. And it's an interesting example. Germany, as you well know, is a manufacturing powerhouse. It's a country that's committed to environmental stewardship, and it's fighting climate change by encouraging very aggressively renewables development. And of course, it's phasing out nuclear power. But these policies have placed higher and higher cost burdens on energy consumers and companies that supply that energy to those consumers. We see here on the left the dramatic rise in renewable energy consumption in Germany. And we see on the right the fact that coal usage over the last 8-9 years is up. At the same time, wind and solar is up. So they've responded to this challenge in order to help the economics of the higher renewable costs by reducing the consumption of clean natural gas and burning more coal. And during the last 5 to 6 years, coal consumption is on the upswing. So what's the result of this? Well, this chart shows the CO2 emissions over the last, actually since 1990, so the last 25 years or so. And you can see after years and years of improvement that the CO2 levels have flattened out. So the country now runs the risk of not being able to meet its climate change targets. And I believe that the increased coal usage is creating much of that challenge. So think about this. Billions of dollars in renewable subsidies, much higher consumer prices, increased coal usage, while of course they're increasing renewables, but little positive impact on the climate. An interesting example, I guess in fairness, understand that I think Germany sees the dilemma that they're in as well and are beginning to embrace a little more fully natural gas as part of this mix. We've been hearing actually for the last 5-6 years, the golden age of gas, but except perhaps for North America and a few other countries, we've yet to realize that. So some of the key points that IGU is making to policymakers are shown here. We're encouraging these policymakers to reflect the cost of additional health care and climate change into energy policy, and to consider establishing mechanisms that reflect those costs in the price of fuels. Policymakers should also make electricity grids more flexible and resilient and enable the integration of multiple sources of supply, which of course will include a lot more renewables. Our message to the global gas industry is to continue to work to minimize the environmental footprint of our production and transportation. And for the gas industry, this includes efforts to measure, monitor, and reduce emissions of methane, which, as you know, is a very powerful greenhouse gas. In fact, the IGU is actively supporting an initiative that's led by the International Energy Agency, the IEA, to address methane. We were at a workshop with them in Paris just last week, and we'll be participating in a number of events throughout the course of this year and reporting out to the German G20 presidency about efforts to reduce methane. Speaking of the IEA, I just have a few slides from the Annual Energy Outlook of 2016. And despite the challenges that our global industry faces, the future remains bright. Our friends from the IEA that suggest that in most realistic scenarios, gas demand will continue to grow in the foreseeable future. Countries in this region are driving much of the demand growth as populations grow, become more urbanized, and standards of living increase. You here in Indonesia, as a key supplier both domestically and to this region, know this certainly better than me. We could see here that developing countries clearly are going to lead the growth in global gas demand. But what was also interesting to me as I looked at the United States, which is the top line, that just how much this energy source, natural gas, permeates our economy. Homes, businesses for electricity generation, chemicals production, and now it's even a growing fuel for transportation. And of course you see dramatic increases in growth in areas such as the Middle East, China, India, and so forth. My role as president of the IGU has taken me around the world over the last year and a half. At the G20 meetings in Beijing last year, we heard from Chinese officials of their bullish plans for natural gas, taking it from 6.5% of their economy to 10% of their energy mix by 2020. We heard from Prime Minister Modi of India just last December of India's aggressive plans to take natural gas from 6% of their energy mix to 15% of their energy mix by 2030. And when you consider that those economies are growing, that's a very big task ahead. But they clearly see natural gas as a driver for both economic development and environmental improvement. So if this demand growth is going to be centered in Asia, the gas has to come from somewhere, whether it's produced domestically or imported. And clearly, I think it's likely that there will be considerable growth in imports over the coming decades. The IEA's data and their projections clearly support this. You could see here that other aspects in Asia, China, India, and so forth, comprise the lion's share of the growth in the coming decades. Some pipelines, certainly, but much of this is going to be liquefied natural gas imports. Speaking of LNG imports, it's well known that over the last several years, the largest increases in LNG capacity have been brought online by Australia. The U.S. now is in a major expansion phase. Our first export facility, Cheniere, is shipping product all over the world. It's expanding dramatically and is positioned to be a major player around the world, and particularly in this region, for years to come. And as you know, a number of additional LNG facilities are under construction and will be coming on over the next few years. So the capacity additions from both Australia and the United States should take us into the early 2020s, where then growing demand will require additional global supplies to fuel this market. So that one of the big questions is, from where? East Africa is a candidate, so is Canada, and of course additional expansions from the current players. Actually, it's going to be very interesting to watch plans and announcements over the next several years to see who's going to emerge as that next large supplier after the United States brings its capacity online. But also, to be clear, policymakers, market leaders, and markets need to send clear signals to suppliers that gas remains an important part of their plans for tomorrow's energy future. We're seeing in many parts of the world that security of demand, making sure that the need for that gas is going to be there, is becoming as important as security of supply. I have a few more slides, but I'll offer some closing thoughts on the energy transition. Gas will play a huge role in addressing long-term climate concerns while improving the quality of the environment today. But to do that, governments, policymakers should set targets and let the markets figure out how best to meet those standards. Our industry, our energy industry, our gas industry, lives and breathes on innovation. It's one where safety and environmental stewardship are taken very seriously, and where the drive for continuous improvement never ends. As an industry, I firmly believe that our future is bright. Our product offers tremendous benefits to our fellow citizens. And I look forward to working with all of you and our friends around the global gas industry to work tirelessly to realize this promise of gas. And these messages are messages that we're taking to key policymakers around the world. I mentioned the G20, where China led the G20 last year. As part of their ministerial meetings in Beijing in June of 2016 in Yangtze Lake, north of Beijing, we held a natural gas day. And during that day, we brought together ministers, industry leaders, thought leaders, policymakers, and addressed the role of gas in fueling China's economy, in fact, fueling the global economy, while improving the environmental conditions around the world. It was a very positive event. It was a standing room only event attended by ministerial staff and personnel from that meeting. It resulted in a very, very positive communique from the G20 that stressed and highlighted the role that gas needed to play in the future energy mix for this world. And that statement was in fact reinforced by the G20 heads of state following their meeting in September. China was a very effective leader of the G20. They had an important agenda to address energy needs for their growing economy. Germany is now the head of the G20, and they have they have a different take on their role. But we've managed, as we've done for the last 5 or 6 G20s, managed to get the International Gas Union at a seat at the G20 table, and we'll be aggressively working with the German policymakers to ensure that gas's role in growing economies, gas's role as a way to clean the air, gas's role as a way to complement renewables, and the gas industry's response to the environmental challenges of methane mitigation and reduction will be addressed at the German G20 leadership. So we followed China's G20 back in December with a ministerial event in India. We had the opportunity to meet with Prime Minister Modi, Energy Minister Pradhan, and brought together again ministers of energy, heads of international companies, and various policymakers, thought leaders with this event. And again, we were stressing this message from IGU of both natural gas promoting economic development and environmental improvement. So this is something I can tell you as IGU members that we are working tirelessly to advocate for the technical, the economic, the political improvements and progress for this industry. And I think we are being received well, not without our challenges, but I can also tell you that the dual message of economic improvement and environmental stewardship is being received well. So finally, I invite all of you to Washington, D.C. in June of 2018. This is when the USA presidency ends. It will be a really memorable, large, high-impact conference. I can assure you after just 2 weeks of our new administration, Washington is a very exciting place right now. I don't know what it's going to look like by June of 2018, but it is going to be the world's largest gas industry event next year. And it's going to really have an impressive collection of industry leaders, a very big collection of government leaders and policymakers, technologists, operators, and financial industry representatives. It's going to showcase the advances that our industry is making and highlight the role that gas that it has in improving standards of living and affecting positive change. We have an invitation out to President Trump to actually address the audience. He's not accepted yet. I will say, though, that the last time the United States hosted the IGU presidency was back in 1988. And President Ronald Reagan did deliver a 20-minute address for all of the delegates. So we do hope that we can replicate that achievement, but if not, we can assure you that many members of his cabinet, including our Secretary of State, who I understand knows the gas industry pretty well, Mr. Rex Tillerson, should be available as well. So during the breaks, the lunch, the evening or the afternoon events today, I'd be happy to talk to you more about the role of gas in this global economy, or perhaps speculate with you on the role of our new administration and what that might mean for the natural gas industry, which I think, by the way, is very positive. I just hope that we maintain our focus on global trade as well as an economy. But I thank you for your kind attention. I thank you for coming back to listen to me speak, and I look forward to spending the rest of the day with you. So thank you very much.